My name is Bethany. I'm 35. Last Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., I was standing in my father's hospital room watching my sister Meredith spoon-feed him chocolate pudding laced with enough sodium to kill a horse. And when I reached for the cup, she slapped my hand so hard the sound echoed off the ICU walls. "Don't you dare touch his food," Meredith hissed, her engagement ring catching the fluorescent light. Clayton stood behind her, arms crossed, blocking the doorway like a bouncer. "You've done enough damage already, Bethany. Dad specifically asked for this. Didn't you, Daddy?" My father, Edward, 68 years old, 4 weeks post-liver transplant, barely strong enough to sit upright, looked at me with glassy, confused eyes. "Meredith knows what I need," he whispered. His hands shook. They'd been steady yesterday. "Dad, that pudding has 890 milligrams of sodium per serving," I said, keeping my voice level, even though my pulse was hammering in my throat. "Your transplant team said no more than 400 milligrams per meal. Your anti-rejection medication—" "Oh, here we go." Meredith rolled her eyes at Clayton, who smirked. "Bethany the expert. Bethany who knows everything. Funny how you suddenly care about Dad's health when there's an inheritance on the line." The nurse at the station pretended not to hear. A doctor walked past without stopping. "I sold 2 rental properties to pay for his surgery," I said quietly. "I resigned from my job. I've been here every single day for 4 months." "And we all know why." Meredith set down the pudding cup and stood, her voice rising. "You think sacrificing things makes you special? You think Dad owes you something? He doesn't owe you anything, Bethany. He chose me to handle his affairs because I'm the responsible one. I'm the one who doesn't make everything about myself." Clayton nodded. "She's got power of attorney now, legal and medical. Your father made his choice." Something cold slid down my spine. "What?" "Dad signed the papers yesterday," Meredith said, and her smile was the same one she'd used when she was 7 and broke my science project and told Mom I did it. "He trusts me. Not you. Never you." Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 8 years to when I first understood what my father's love actually looked like. I was 27, standing in his retail office on Cascade Road. He owned 4 sporting goods stores across Michigan, and he'd just offered me the assistant manager position at the Grand Rapids location. I'd been working there part-time through college, graphic design degree fresh in my hand, portfolio ready for agency interviews. "The pay is $52,000, he said, sliding the contract across his mahogany desk. "Full benefits, profit sharing. You'd be set, Bethany, stable." "Dad, I got accepted to the design internship in Chicago, the one at Fieldstone and Associates. It's a fantasy." He didn't look up from his paperwork. "Meredith is getting married next spring. She'll need help planning. She'll need you here." I remember the smell of leather and new sneakers from the showroom below, the sound of customers laughing. "What about what I need?" He finally looked at me. "What you need is to stop chasing dreams that won't pan out and start thinking about family. Meredith has always been the practical one. Maybe you should learn from her." I took the Chicago internship anyway. It paid $28,000, and my studio apartment had mice, but I worked 70-hour weeks and made senior designer in 3 years. When I came home for Christmas that year, my father shook my hand like I was a client. Meredith got a hug that lasted 30 seconds, but the memory that actually matters, the one that kept me going through everything that came after, was smaller, quieter. I was 16. Dad had taken me to his warehouse on a Saturday, just the 2 of us, to inventory new shipment. While we counted boxes of basketballs, he said, "You've got a good eye for detail, B. You see things other people miss. That's going to matter someday." He'd called me B, just that once. I held on to it for 19 years. The first real betrayal came 3 weeks after the transplant surgery. I was sleeping on a cot in the hospital family room. I'd been there for 31 consecutive nights, when Meredith woke me at 6:14 a.m. by slamming the door. She had two security guards with her. "You need to leave," she said. She wasn't yelling. That would have been easier. Her voice was flat, administrative. "Dad's care team agrees that your presence is causing him stress. These officers will escort you out." I sat up. My neck hurt. My mouth tasted like vending machine coffee. "What are you talking about? You've been hovering over him constantly, questioning every medical decision. The nurses filed a complaint. Dad needs peace to recover, and you're preventing that." "The nurses?" I looked at the guards. One of them had kind eyes. The other was checking his watch. "I never questioned anyone. I've been helping. You've been suffocating him." Meredith held up her phone, showing me a document I couldn't read from 6 feet away. "This is a formal request from Dad, witnessed by his care team, asking that you be restricted from visiting outside of designated hours, 4 to 5 p.m. daily. That's it." My hands started shaking. I tried to remember yesterday. Had I done something? Said something? Dad had smiled when I brought him sugar-free Jell-O. He'd told me about a dream he had where Mom was still alive. We'd watched 2 episodes of a cooking show. "Can I talk to him?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "He's sleeping. Doctor's orders, no interruptions before noon." Meredith tilted her head, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Satisfaction. "Clayton is taking over your visiting slot today. He and Dad have really bonded." Clayton. Her boyfriend of 11 months. A pharmaceutical sales rep who'd been fired from his last job for falsifying expense reports. The security guard with kind eyes cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to ask you to gather your things." I packed my duffel bag, toothbrush, phone charger, the mystery novel I'd been reading to Dad when he couldn't sleep, 3 changes of clothes that all smelled like antiseptic and panic. When I walked past the ICU nurses' station, nobody met my eyes. Outside, the morning air was cold enough to hurt, September in Michigan. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could make my hands work well enough to turn the key. I didn't know it then, but the 1-hour visiting window was just the beginning. Over the next 10 days, I showed up at 4 p.m. exactly. Some days Meredith or Clayton would be in the room, and I'd have to wait in the hallway until they finished. Some days Dad would be asleep, exhausted from morning physical therapy, the nurses would say, and I'd sit beside his bed in silence, watching his chest rise and fall. On day 7, I noticed his medication chart had been altered. The anti-rejection pills, tacrolimus, 1 milligram twice daily, had a notation: patient difficulty swallowing whole pills, crushing per family request. I pulled up the transplant pharmacy guidelines on my phone. Right there, in bold red text, "Do not crush or split. Crushing tacrolimus reduces efficacy and may lead to organ rejection." My stomach dropped so fast I had to sit down. I found his nurse, Rachel, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a cartoon stethoscope. "I think there's an error on my dad's medication chart. The tacrolimus, it says it's being crushed, but family request." Rachel didn't even look up from her computer. "Your sister spoke with the attending. Your father was having trouble with the pills. We verified it with him directly." But the transplant team said, "We documented everything properly, ma'am. If you have concerns, you can speak with your sister. She's his power of attorney." There it was again. Power of attorney. "When did he sign that?" I asked. Rachel's fingers paused on the keyboard. "I'm not authorized to discuss legal documents. You'd need to ask family." I asked Meredith that evening, when she finally emerged from Dad's room at 5:47 p.m. At those 17 minutes before visiting hours ended. "It's none of your business," she said, brushing past me toward the elevator. "He's my father." She stopped, turned around. Her face was perfectly composed, makeup flawless even after a full day at the hospital. "He's my responsibility. There's a difference. Dad understands that I'm the one who can handle complex financial and medical decisions. You're good at drawing pretty pictures, Bethany. That's wonderful. Truly. But this requires actual capability." The elevator doors opened. An elderly couple stepped out. Meredith smiled at them warmly, then looked back at me. 4 to 5 p.m. tomorrow, she said. Don't be late. That night, I went back to the house I'd rented specifically to be near the hospital. A small two-bedroom on Fuller Avenue, $1,600 per month, completely draining what was left of my savings after selling my rental properties. I sat on the floor and opened my laptop. The two properties I'd sold had been my entire investment portfolio. One was a duplex in Kentwood I'd bought in 2018 for $184,000. The other was a small ranch house in Wyoming that I'd inherited from Mom's side and renovated. Together, they'd been generating $2,800 in monthly rental income. I'd sold them in emergency sales. No time for proper listings, no time for negotiations. The duplex went for $167,000. The ranch house went for $143,000. Total, $310,000. And after paying off the mortgages and closing costs, I'd walked away with $186,000. Every penny had gone to Dad's surgery, hospital bills, and post-transplant care. His retail business was struggling. He'd taken out loans to keep the stores afloat during COVID. His savings were gone. Without my money, he would have died on the transplant waiting list. I'd also resigned from my position as art director at Fieldstone and Associates, the job I'd worked 8 years to earn, the corner office, the team of 6 designers who reported to me, the $127,000 salary. My boss, Michael Torres, had tried to talk me out of it. Take a leave of absence, he'd said, standing in my office doorway while I packed up my desk plants and award plaques. Family medical leave. We'll hold your position. I don't know how long he'll need me, I'd said. It could be months, years. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. But I'd seen the email chain. The board of directors wanted my role filled immediately. We had 3 major clients threatening to walk if projects got delayed. Michael could offer me kindness, but he couldn't offer me reality. I'd submitted my resignation letter on a Friday. By Monday, they'd promoted Jen Kowalski, my former junior designer, into my position. She'd sent me a text. I'm so sorry about your dad. Call if you need anything. I never called. Sitting on that rental house floor, I did the math. I'd given up $310,000 in property value, $127,000 in annual salary. Career momentum that had taken nearly a decade to build, my entire financial future. And my father had given Meredith power of attorney. I opened a bottle of wine I'd bought for Dad's homecoming celebration, a $47 Cabernet he'd mentioned liking, and I drank the whole thing sitting on that floor, watching headlights slide across the ceiling. The public humiliation happened 3 weeks later, at the hospital cafeteria at 12:32 p.m. on a Thursday. I'd started picking up freelance graphic design work, small projects, logo designs for local businesses, $300 here, $500 there, just enough to cover rent. I was working on a restaurant menu redesign on my laptop, sitting at a corner table with terrible coffee and a bagel I was too nauseous to eat. Meredith walked in with Clayton and 2 people I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit and a woman carrying a leather portfolio. They got in line at the sandwich station. I tried to make myself invisible, looked down at my screen, kept typing. Bethany! Meredith's voice carried across the entire cafeteria. 40, maybe 50 people looked up. What a surprise seeing you here. I thought you'd be working. She walked over, the entourage following. Clayton was smiling, his pharmaceutical sales smile. I am working, I said quietly, gesturing at my laptop. Oh, that's right. You do freelance now. She said freelance, the way someone might say unemployed. How's that going? Making ends meet? The man in the suit looked uncomfortable. The woman with the portfolio was studying the menu board very intently. It's fine. Good, that's good. Meredith pulled out the chair across from me without being invited. Because Dad and I have been talking, and we wanted to make sure you're okay, financially. You gave up so much to be here, and now with the restricted visiting hours, you must feel a bit adrift. My coffee had gone cold. I wrapped my hands around the cup anyway. We're actually meeting with Dad's estate attorney today, Meredith continued, nodding toward the uncomfortable man. This is Roger Hendricks. We're updating Dad's will and trust documents. Just making sure everything is crystal clear about asset distribution, succession planning for the retail business, all of that. Something hardened in my chest. Something that had been soft and hopeful, and kept expecting my sister to remember we used to be close. Dad's doing that now? I asked. While he's still recovering? Dad wants his affairs in order. It gives him peace. Meredith's hand rested on the table, her engagement ring impossible to miss. 3 carats, emerald cut, platinum band. Clayton had proposed 2 weeks after Dad got out of the ICU. You understand, don't you? He needs to know his legacy is in capable hands. The attorney, Roger Hendricks, cleared his throat. Ms. Meredith, perhaps we should— It's fine, Roger. Meredith waved him off. Bethany is family. She deserves to know that Dad is being very generous, very thoughtful. He wants to make sure everyone is taken care of according to their contributions. Contributions, I repeated. Well, yes, time, energy, capability. Dad has always been fair. The woman with the leather portfolio was now staring directly at me, her eyes full of something that looked like pity. I closed my laptop, slowly. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I hope the meeting goes well, I said. My voice came out even, calm. I stood up, gathering my things. Please tell Dad I'll see him at 4 p.m. Actually, Dad asked if you could skip today, Clayton said, speaking for the first time. He's got a full schedule. Attorney meetings, phone calls with the accountant, family discussions about the business transition. You know how it is. I looked at him, really looked at him. His cologne was too strong. His tie had a grease stain near the bottom. He was holding Meredith's hand, thumb rubbing across her knuckles in a gesture that seemed rehearsed. Family discussions, I said. Right. I left. I didn't look back. I didn't cry in the bathroom or the parking lot or my car. I drove home, parked in the driveway, and sat in silence for 15 minutes watching a neighbor's kid ride a bicycle in circles. Something had clicked inside me, something quiet but permanent. That night, I went to Walmart and bought 3 things: a pack of wireless security cameras, a 64-gigabyte memory card, and a book on Michigan eldercare law. I installed the first camera the next day during my 1-hour visiting window. It was the size of a pen cap, magnetic mount, positioned on the windowsill behind Dad's Get Well cards, where it had a clear view of the entire room. The second camera went into a tissue box on the side table. The third went into the charging dock of the tablet I'd given Dad. For watching movies, I told him, though he barely used it. They all fed to a cloud server on my phone. Motion activated. Audio enabled. What's that, B? Dad asked, watching me adjust the tissue box. He'd been having a good day, alert, responsive, color in his cheeks. Just tidying up, I said. The nurses said visitors leave too much clutter. He nodded, already losing focus. The glassy look was back in his eyes. It came and went now, sometimes 3 or 4 times during my hour. I kissed his forehead. His skin was too warm. I'll see you tomorrow, Dad. Meredith is bringing dinner, he mumbled. She's a good girl. So thoughtful. She is, I said, because what else could I say? I watched the footage that night. Started at 5:07 p.m., right when I'd left. 5:43 p.m. Meredith and Clayton entered the room. Meredith checked the hallway, then closed the door. 5:46 p.m. Meredith pulled a plastic bag from her purse. Inside, 2 pill bottles, a small mortar and pestle, a package of chocolate pudding cups. 5:52 p.m. Bah. She crushed 3 pills, his tacrolimus, the anti-rejection medication, into fine powder while Clayton watched the door. 5:58 p.m. She mixed the powder into the pudding. The dose was wrong. I could tell even from the camera angle. Too much powder. The pills weren't supposed to be crushed at all, but even if they were, this was triple the prescribed dose. 6:04 p.m. She spoon-fed it to Dad, who ate it without question, smiling at her. 6:11 p.m. Clayton showed Dad documents on a tablet. Legal documents. Dad's hand shook when he tried to sign the screen. Meredith guided his finger. Just here, Daddy, and here, that's perfect. 6:23 p.m. They left. Meredith kissed Dad's cheek. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll finish the property transfers. I watched the footage 4 times. Then I started taking notes. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. September 14th, 7:12 p.m. Shao Meredith brought processed frozen dinners, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, gravy, each containing 1,200 plus milligrams sodium. Dad's limit was 1,500 milligrams per day. She fed him 3 meals like this. September 16th, 6:47 p.m. Clayton showed Dad spreadsheets of the retail business. Your stores are hemorrhaging money, Edward. $43,000 lost last quarter alone. You need to transfer ownership before creditors come after your personal assets. Meredith knows how to turn this around. September 19th, 5:38 p.m. Meredith crushed pills again. This time she palmed 2 of them entirely, pocketed them instead of giving them to Dad. His anti-rejection protocol required exact dosing. Missing even 1 dose increased rejection risk by 40%. September 22nd, 6:29 p.m. Dad signed more documents. I froze the frame, zoomed in. Property transfer deeds, both his retail business locations and his personal residence, a 4-bedroom house in East Grand Rapids worth $680,000. September 24th, 8:01 p.m. And Meredith and Clayton stayed late. The camera caught their conversation clearly. Clayton. How much longer do we have to do this? Meredith. Until everything is transferred. Another week, maybe 2. The attorney said we need to space out the documents so it doesn't look suspicious. Clayton. And Bethany? Meredith. Bethany is exactly where I need her. Isolated, discredited. By the time Dad actually recovers, if he recovers, she'll have no legal standing. No one will believe her. Clayton. You're brilliant. You know that? Meredith. I know. Now hand me his phone. I need to delete those messages from his doctor. I saved everything. Backed it up in 3 separate cloud accounts. Sent copies to an external hard drive I locked in a safe deposit box. And I waited. Dad came home on October 2nd. Not to his house in East Grand Rapids. Meredith had already moved him into a medical recovery suite she'd set up in her own home in Ada. He needs round-the-clock care, she'd explained to the discharge nurse. I've hired private help. My sister has work obligations. My visiting window at her house, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 to 3 p.m. I installed cameras there too, tiny ones. In the guest bathroom, the living room, the kitchen. It took 3 visits and a small screwdriver I kept in my purse. The footage from Meredith's house was worse. October 5th. She mixed his crushed pills with applesauce that had been sitting out for 4 hours. Room temperature, bacteria breeding ground for someone with a suppressed immune system. October 9th. She and Clayton discussed selling Dad's retail business. Marcus Tillerman offered $340,000 for both locations, Clayton said. It's below market, but we can't wait. Your dad's medical bills are going to pile up and Bethany might get suspicious. October 12th. Dad asked about me. I heard it on the recording, his voice weak but clear. Where's Bethany? She hasn't called. Meredith's response. She's been very busy with her new life, Dad. I think the stress of everything was too much for her. Some people aren't built for family responsibility. Dad went quiet after that. October 18th. Meredith told Dad she was planning a celebration party. You've made such an incredible recovery. We should celebrate. Invite the whole family. Show everyone how strong you are. Dad smiled. That sounds nice. I'll handle everything, Meredith said. You just rest. The party was scheduled for November 3rd, a Saturday, at my rental house on Fuller Avenue. My rental house, the one I was paying for. Meredith had asked if she could borrow it for a few hours. Her house wasn't big enough for the gathering she wanted to throw. 30 or 40 people, maybe, she'd said. Family, Dad's friends, some business associates. It would mean so much to him. And to me. I'd said yes. Of course I said yes. Because by then, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I spent 3 weeks preparing. Not revenge. I kept telling myself that. Just truth. Just evidence. Just facts. I called the police on November 2nd, asked for Detective Sarah Granholm, who specialized in elder abuse. I'd researched her specifically. She'd won awards for prosecuting financial exploitation cases. I need to report a crime, I said. It's happening tomorrow night. I have video evidence. Hours of it. But I need you to see it in real time. She listened to my summary. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for 10 seconds. Send me a preview clip, she said. Something that shows clear criminal activity. I sent her the September 22nd footage of the property deed signing. Dad's shaking hands, Meredith guiding his finger to the signature line, the timestamp, the audio of Clayton saying, "Make sure he doesn't read the fine print." Detective Granholm called back 30 minutes later. "I'll be there tomorrow, plain clothes, with 2 officers. What time should we arrive?" 7 p.m., I said. "The party starts at 6. Give them an hour to settle in." "Miss Bethany," she said carefully, "you understand this might destroy your family." "My family destroyed itself," I said. "I'm just turning on the lights." November 3rd arrived cold and clear. I got to the rental house at 2 p.m. to help set up, even though Meredith didn't want my help. "Just stay out of the way," she said, directing caterers and decorators like a general commanding troops. There was a crystal chandelier someone had rented, completely unnecessary for a casual party. There were matching table linens. There was a full bar setup with a bartender in a vest. Clayton was testing the sound system, making sure the giant TV I'd bought for watching movies could connect to his phone. "In case we want to show a slideshow," he explained to a cousin I barely recognized. By 6 p.m., the house was full, 37 people by my count. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Dad's business partners, church friends, neighbors. Everyone dressed like this was a wedding. Dad sat in the place of honor, a leather armchair someone had brought in. Positioned in front of the TV, he looked thin, tired. But he smiled when people hugged him, when they told him how good he looked, how miraculous his recovery was. Meredith stood beside him like a guardian. She'd had her hair professionally done. Her dress was designer. She kept touching Dad's shoulder, his arm, performing devotion. At 6:47 p.m., she clinked a knife against a champagne glass. The room went quiet. "I want to thank everyone for being here," she said, her voice carrying perfectly. "These last few months have been the hardest of our lives. When Dad needed that liver transplant, we didn't know if he'd survive. But he fought. He's a fighter." People murmured agreement. Someone said, "Hear, hear." "And I want to thank everyone who supported us. The medical team, our family, our friends." She paused, looked at me standing by the kitchen doorway. Even Bethany, who helped in her own way before her work obligations took her elsewhere. A few people glanced at me. I smiled, nodded, stayed silent. "But mostly," Meredith continued, "I want to talk about trust, about family, about knowing who you can count on when everything falls apart." She pulled out her phone. Clayton moved to the TV, ready to connect. "Dad and I have been working very closely these past few months, making sure his legacy is protected, making sure his business, his properties, everything he built, it's all in the right hands." She was going to show documents, I could see it. She was going to publicly announce the asset transfers, the will changes, everything. She was going to humiliate me in front of our entire family. "My father has officially trusted me to take over this entire family estate," she said, her voice proud and clear, "because I am the only person actually capable of handling such a massive financial responsibility." Clayton connected his phone. A document appeared on the TV screen. The property deed for Dad's house in East Grand Rapids. Meredith's name where Dad's used to be. People gasped. Someone said, "Oh my God, Meredith, that's incredible." I pulled out my own phone, opened the Cloud app, selected the video file I'd prepared, a compilation, the best hits, the clearest evidence. I walked over to the TV. "Clayton, can I borrow that for just a second? I have something I'd like to show everyone too." He looked at Meredith. She looked at me, confused, not threatened. Why would she be threatened? I was powerless. I was nothing. Sure, Clayton said, disconnecting his phone. I connected mine, opened the video file, pressed play. The screen showed Meredith's house. Date stamp, October 5th. Time, 6:34 p.m. On screen, Meredith crushing pills with a mortar and pestle. Her voice, crystal clear through the TV speakers. He won't know the difference. The whole point is to keep him confused until everything is transferred. The room went dead silent. The video continued. September 22nd. Meredith and Clayton discussing the property transfers. Clayton saying, "And Bethany?" Meredith saying, "Bethany is exactly where I need her. Isolated, discredited." Someone in the crowd said, "What is this?" October 9th. Meredith feeding Dad high-sodium meals while reading off his dietary restrictions on her phone, deliberately ignoring them. Her laugh. "He's not gonna die. I'm not a monster, I just need him pliable." Dad's face had gone white. He was staring at the screen like he didn't understand what he was seeing. The video showed September 19th, Meredith pocketing 2 of Dad's anti-rejection pills instead of giving them to him. Clayton's voice. "You sure this won't actually hurt him?" Meredith. "It'll make him sicker, which makes him more dependent, which makes the transfers look more urgent. It's perfect." Meredith lunged for my phone. "Turn that off! This is edited! This is fake!" I held the phone out of reach. Detective Granholm stepped through the front door, her badge already visible. 2 uniformed officers behind her. "Nobody move," Granholm said calmly. "Bethany, keep the video playing." The compilation was 8 minutes long. I'd organized it chronologically, with timestamps burned into the corner of each clip. Pill crushing, dietary sabotage, conspiracy conversations. Document signings where Dad's hand shook and Meredith guided it. The phrase "before Bethany finds out" appeared 3 times. When it finished, the room was completely silent except for someone crying. I think it was my Aunt Carol. Dad was staring at Meredith. You did this?" "Daddy, no, she's lying. Meredith's voice cracked. Mascara was running. "I was helping you. I was protecting you from her." "Protecting me?" Dad's voice was getting stronger. The confusion in his eyes was clearing. "You were poisoning me." "I wasn't poisoning. I was managing your medication. The doctors didn't understand your needs like I did." Clayton was edging toward the door. One of the officers moved to block him. "I have questions for both of you," Detective Granholm said. "But first," she looked at Dad. "Mr. Edward, do you understand what you just saw?" Dad looked at the frozen image on the TV screen. Meredith's face, caught mid-sentence, saying, "Bethany is exactly where I need her." "I understand," he said quietly. "I understand I've been very, very foolish." "Daddy, please!" Meredith dropped to her knees beside his chair. "I did it for us, for our family. Bethany was going to take everything. She sold her properties, she quit her job, she was positioning herself to manipulate you. I had to act first." "You had power of attorney," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You had access to his medical care, his finances, his property. And you used all of it to isolate him from everyone who actually loved him, so you could steal everything he owned." Meredith's face twisted. "You don't get to talk about love. You abandoned him. You were too busy with your pathetic freelance career to actually be there." "I was there every single day until you banned me," I said quietly. "I sold 2 properties worth $310,000 to pay for his surgery. I resigned from a 6-figure job to take care of him. And you convinced him I'd abandoned him while you were literally crushing his medication and feeding him food that could kill him." Aunt Carol was definitely crying now. Uncle James had his hand over his mouth. Detective Granholm stepped forward. Meredith Schmidt, Clayton Rourke, you're both under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Clayton ran. He actually ran. He made it to the kitchen before the second officer tackled him into the refrigerator. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the house. Meredith just sat there on the floor, staring at me. You planned this, she whispered. You let me throw this party so you could humiliate me. I planned to tell the truth, I said. You chose the audience. As they led her out in handcuffs, she looked back at Dad one last time. I'm your daughter. Tell them I'm your daughter. Dad didn't say anything. He just sat in that leather armchair, hands folded in his lap, watching her go. When the police cars left, red and blue lights flashing through the windows, neighbors gathering on their lawns, the party guests started leaving too. Quietly, uncomfortably. A few people hugged me, most just left. Uncle James stopped on his way out. I'm sorry, he said. We should have seen it. Yeah, I said. You should have. By 9 p.m., it was just me and Dad in the rental house. The caterers had packed up. The crystal chandelier had been returned. The giant TV was still displaying the frozen frame of Meredith's face. I turned it off. Bethany, Dad said. His voice was different, smaller. I need to apologize. You don't have to. I do. He looked at his hands. I let her convince me you were trying to take advantage of me. I believed her when she said you only cared about the inheritance. I signed those papers. I pushed you away. I chose her. I sat down on the floor in front of his chair. My knees hurt. My head hurt. Everything hurt. Why? I asked. Why did you always choose her? He was quiet for a long time. She was easier. She told me what I wanted to hear. She made me feel like a good father without me having to do the work. He met my eyes. You challenged me. You left. You built a life I didn't understand. And that scared me. So you punished me for being independent. I punished you for being strong. He reached out, touched my hair. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see what she was doing. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I made you give up everything just to prove you loved me. I leaned my head against his knee. I didn't cry. I'd cried all my tears weeks ago. What happens now? I asked. Now I fix what I broke, he said. The property transfers. I'm going to reverse them. All of them. The business, the house, everything. I'm meeting with Roger Hendricks tomorrow to void every document Meredith had me sign. And then I'm going to write a proper will. One where you get what you always deserved. Not because you sacrificed, not because you earned it, but because you're my daughter, and I failed you, and I have some time left to try to make that right. 6 months later, I was standing in the Grand Rapids Design District, keys in my hand, looking at a small storefront with floor-to-ceiling windows. The sign above the door said, Threshold Design Studio, in letters I'd designed myself. Inside, 3 workstations, a conference table, a coffee maker that actually worked, and a corkboard already filling up with project proposals. I'd used part of Dad's inheritance, he'd insisted, even though I'd tried to refuse, to start my own firm. Small, boutique, specializing in healthcare and nonprofit branding, the kind of work that mattered. My first client was a liver transplant foundation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dad had recovered. Fully. Once Meredith stopped tampering with his medication and diet, his body had done what it was supposed to do. Healed. His transplant team called it miraculous. I called it evidence. He sold the retail business, downsized to a small condo, spent Tuesdays volunteering at the hospital where he'd recovered, talking to other transplant patients about the importance of having people around who actually wanted them to survive. We had dinner every Sunday. Sometimes we talked about Meredith. She'd taken a plea deal, 2 years in minimum security, 5 years probation, permanent restraining order. Clayton got 3 years. Sometimes we just talked about basketball or the weather or my new projects. Last Sunday, Dad brought a photo album to dinner. Old pictures. Me at 16 in his warehouse, counting basketballs. You've got a good eye for detail, B. You called me B that day, I said. Just once. I should have called you that every day, he said. I should have seen you. He did now. That had to be enough. On my desk at Threshold Design, I kept a small object, one of the wireless cameras I'd used to document everything. I'd thought about throwing them away, some kind of symbolic gesture, but instead I kept one, right where I could see it. A reminder that silence isn't loyalty. Silence is just letting someone else write your story. If you're watching this, and you've ever had to gather evidence against someone you love to protect yourself or someone else, type, I gathered proof in the comments. Or if you're still in that situation, trying to figure out what to do, type, I'm still gathering. Both are acts of courage. Both are survival. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here.